Another thing is that I was like, in coming into this knowledge that I'm ready to leave and I'm ready to move on, and that people are stupid and Earth's never going to get it. And, you know, I would even see people as negative because they were always doing negative things to me or things that I felt were hurting the Earth and the planet. And I took a lot of that personal until I started realizing more about what's actually really happening here, and that the only damage that most people are really doing is to their DNA and to themselves, and they pass it to their kids. And this is continuously happening because, see, the thing is, and that's why I love when Brother Rich named it Infinity Matrix. I was like, man, I know we're going to do this because that's exactly what it is. Because every time any kind of soul, I don't care how large it is, precipitates, which I call the participation, meaning you die, technically, your soul comes up out of your body like an ember, and it goes to make its place in the stars. And depending upon how bright it is, it determines the magnitude of how it comes back, because we keep coming back, or forward, as I always say, depending upon what direction you're going in. This is how the quote unquote reincarnation works. This is why it's always good to be in good standing with the Great Mother, because ultimately she's the only one that can really regulate in the deep. See, because the first layer, which is like considered like the moon. So imagine from the distance between sea level to the moon, that's called the first heaven or the first haven. Now take that area and subtract it from the depth of the ocean. So you'll go sea level, and then you'll go down as much as the distance between sea level and the moon on top. That whole realm right there, that's called the first heaven. That is the realm that the jackal, if you may, as you're going to know exactly who he is in a moment, that is the realm that he rules. So this is also why when most people go to sleep, they're generally in here because they don't know how to go deeper, because all of the concepts and everything that they have is around this masculine God, which as you can see ain't a man at all. It's more like a boy, right? So at the reality is that there's like this realm, if you may, which is also corresponding to the influence that the moon has over the water, especially those on the surface, and it influences them. So it was known that really the higher that you ranked up, if you may, on your spine, you would pass through beyond the moon, who was the lowest one. The moon is also corresponds to your sexual organs. It's the first ladder. Then you will keep going up. And that's why they tried to show you the chakras in correspondence to planets, because you're really going through different spheres of the good reflections. If you're moving in the proper direction, you're going through the spheres of the good reflections of the hebdomad, i.e. the archons or the organs. These are the ones that were used to create the bodies.
Wow, we on track to the next thing, right? So, you know, I'm definitely looking forward to what comes through. You know, respect and honors to the kings and queens that have, and the nobles that have showed up into the space, and, you know, are just here to, you know, really dial in and really get something special together. So I'm excited about the collective energy that's coming. It was building in the beginning. It was getting me, like I said, it was getting me sick. I was like, you know, the butterflies was in full metamorphosis, you know, because your audience, the tribe here is just, you know, it's so incredible. Lots of positivity. Like, I couldn't find a negative comment. You know, I was like, I stopped reading comments just so I didn't get a negative comment. I was like, good, I'm good on this. But yeah, just, you know, delighted to be in the space. I know many have been looking forward to when we get a chance to come into orbit with each other again. So, yes.
Indeed. Also, shout out to the chat. Y'all very important to what's going on. This couldn't happen without y'all. So you gotta, you know, applaud yourself for being in the building tonight. And remember, your genes, your body's listening to everything you say to yourself. So, you know, it's okay to salute yourself. It's okay to talk to yourself positive. And that's what this is all about tonight. Also, shout out to Q Reeves in the building, brother. I haven't interviewed this brother in a while. Also, that's another brother that's out there on the scene doing what he do. Shout out to that brother. Seven. So many. They say there's so many different paths to the light. You are a path. I've interviewed so many great people. I appreciate what you bring to humanity, the lessons, the teachings. You take this very serious, and I love when somebody's passionate about what they do. And I could definitely feel that. I don't hear that in your voice. I definitely feel that when you speak, my brother. So I want you to know I appreciate your passion for this universal knowledge that you share with the rest of the globe, my brother. I want to start out like that.
Thank you.
And with that being said, my brother, it's an amazing topic. I named it Melanin Time Travelers. That grabs the audience. They say time is thought. I hear some people say time is the fifth element. Time is the process, this divine mind uses to understand itself, they say. I like to relate this information because I don't want people to think we're in here for entertainment or for mental masturbation. And sometimes I like to use things going on in society and relate it to ancient knowledge and tie it together so we could solve problems we're having in this current paradigm using ancient knowledge. So one of the things that's one of the biggest problems right now in this world right now, Sevan, is mental illness. Not only mental illness, childhood trauma. A lot of the mental illness is triggered by childhood trauma that we all experience, and we all have different levels of childhood trauma, whether it's abuse, whether it's molestation, whether it's neglect, whether it's abandonment, just different levels of childhood trauma. What I want to ask you, my brother, starting out with talking about this topic, there's so many directions to go, whether it's multi-dimensional nature, and I want people to keep that in mind, or whether it's parallel universes or just so many things. But I want to start out by talking a little bit about the negative confessions, also known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So this is a list of 42 sins which the soul, and we all know what the soul is, of the deceased says that it has never committed when it stands in judgment in the afterlife. The soul will recite these in the presence of the God who weighed their truth and decided one's fate. Now, from what I understand and what I have read, because this is he's smiling, because this is a holographic reality, they say it's illusion, the Maya, different names for this being an illusion. The soul will get up there and say, let's say the soul got up there and said, I ain't do that. I ain't do that shit either. No, I ain't do that. I ain't do that. No, I ain't still. I was never down there. So imagine playing the game Street Fighter and you're Ryu. Ryu's the character and you're fighting in Bison. You would say, I was never Ryu. That was just a character. I'm not Ryu. I never fought M. Bison. I didn't do anything Ryu did to M. Bison. So saying that to say, my brother, connected it with childhood trauma. Knowing our multidimensional nature, can we go back, time travel? Time is thought. Can we travel back to our childhood? Look at our childhood. It's say our father abuses, like MJ, Michael Jackson and his father. And we say to ourselves, I didn't get abused by my father because that was never me. Now, is that a form because you understand your multidimensional nature by saying, I'm not going to be affected with this as an adult because I was never abused because that was never me. I'm a projector lens or whatever you want to say it. Would you consider that a form of liberation or will you consider that a form of denial once you understand your multidimensional nature? Because this is all we're trying to use this ancient knowledge to help us, my brother.
Yeah. I mean, see that's exactly that. What you're talking about is exactly what I've been really centering into. Is just how we got to take it from the top. So let's take it from the top.
Yes.
So the first thing is that just the sheer nature of the kind of beings that we are, we can connect to so many different things. So the first thing that I would probably suggest to everybody here is that you bring yourself actually here to this particular build, right? So this is just for the audience to take a moment and understand what you came here for is actually here. But if you're not here, there's absolutely no way for you to be able to receive it. And all of us are conduits in many ways. And when we understand the forms of communication that have been being used and how, you get not only transmissions, but you get upgrades, and you actually do accomplish even the context of this build today, which is time travel. It's all centered around, some very, very what we'll make today basic principles. But it's not going to make sense if we don't do a few things. So the first thing is, again, like, there'll be stuff that went on before this conversation. Like, as you know, when some power is about to come through, there'll be little quirks, like stuff's not turning on, stuff's not working, or, you completely blow the time frame or whatever. And then you'll kind of plan to come in a certain way, but now it's kind of like the click, it's kind of like it's off step, right? So for all of us, it's always important to realize that we can always just stop time and get in step, and then actually really go into some imploration and exploration, right? Like just the multi-lens of this, so that we can see exactly what we're doing. And then it's not really for a person to actually believe even what we're talking about, because they'll be able to see it and it'll make common sense to them. So that's kind of like the first prerequisite, though. You got to be here, and it's got to make a difference. And sometimes when you put paywalls and things in front of people, like they have to pay some money, they'll pay attention more because they invested.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
But
yes,
it's those who find esoteric knowledge very valuable, they'll pay attention too, because they know that it's value. Everything else in between, like you talk about people getting entertained, they need to be reminded that, hey, it's still, this is about you, and this is about the high levels of what you've been asking about, even if sometimes you're just doing it subconsciously now, because you could be so many layers into the netherworld because of the narrative. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. I also wanted to bring us to that awareness, because what you really were talking about is, are you going to kill something, or are you going to heal it? Are you going to remove it altogether, like try to expunge that memory, or you're going to actually heal the situation? And the difference in between the two is the difference between life and death, to be honest, when you're talking about your energy center. And I want to get into that a little bit more here in a moment.
Yes.
But I just want everyone to also be aware that when you're going to perform any true surgeon's work on yourself, you're going to need to get ready to open yourself up. You're going to need to really do that. You're going to have to open yourself up. And because every time you get hurt, or every time you go through pain, you draw back. Also, the reality is designed for you to close. That's why we all wear clothes, because it's a consistent you hiding all of the private things about yourself. And when you do that, of course, it doesn't allow you to completely express who you are. And of course, if something happens to you when you close up, it deadens who you are. And I just want to bring that in right now, because that's the difference. Are you going to deaden yourself until eventually, as an organism, you don't care about anything? So then at that stage, you wouldn't be able to tap into what we call nature, what we call the stars, what we call hyper levels of existence, because you would lose your empathy. You would lose that ability to actually be able to dial into those very sensitive frequencies. Now, how do we dial into those? We dial into those because we have a magnetic system. It's the same way birds have a magnetic system to help them, one, orientate, and two, to be able to guide themselves. And so the reality is that if the organism's magnetic system is offline, that is really the byproduct of it. You will lose orientation, and you won't be able to actually understand where your path is. And so we also have to understand that as seeds, meaning that even as you've seen it, as far as how small the organisms such as the semen and the egg and the ovum and all that really are, is so small, you can already tell that the type of technology, if you made, that we're working with, and also so numerous. That's the other thing, like how many semen and how many different opportunities there are to fertilize something. This would already let you know that you would be a seed from something else that would be the archetype of you. And just like you will drop seeds over the place, all over the place, plants drop seeds all over the place, men even be dropping seeds all over the place in the napkin and all this, just like your seeds could be all over the place, something can actually take your seed and take it to another galaxy and plant it somewhere else. And then it'll grow up And what it'll be is like a mini version of the original tree. So humans have to realize that happened. That's what happened to us. Like when they're showing these entities with these bags and the grain as they call it, those seeds are like the seeds of our ancestors to birth entire nations, because those seeds are us and the DNA, right? Mm-hmm. So what we're talking about is we're talking about, first, like I said, if we go in the top down approach, which I like because it's kind of like a bird's eye view, and it helps when you're getting into very deep conversation, because once we go deep, we have to still refer to the heights so that we stay rejuvenated as we're going through the process, right? Like to be able to see the sun, it gives happiness, it gives hope, it gives desires, it gives many different things to the world, right? So it's like you having both of those components in these journeys is key. So the first thing I wanted to bring up, just from the top of this thing, is what a super civilization is. Because, many are considering with the world, like what is happening and where are we going with this and what's going to happen. And then there's all these narratives being written. And I wanted to just make sure everybody understands that, because is that we already are coming from at least a type 2 civilization, because we realize how to harness energy from a star. And this art of harnessing stars is what you would call genetics, okay? Because the gen in genetics is about stars, and it's about spirits, and it's about specifically spirits that have a specific kind of energy. So what our ancestors were engaged in doing is they were engaged in building organisms and experiences. And now we're inside of this super hacked experience, because the holiest of holies has been breached, which is your consciousness. Because, and the reason why it's been breached is because, like, your dream in many ways can start serving you up things that you don't really want to see. And sometimes your dreams will intentionally somehow get hacked in a certain way, and you have this experience that you don't want to have. And then when you get up, you be like, man, I'm glad that wasn't that. I'm glad that was a dream.
Yes.
And the truth is that when you're going through that experience, like, you're going through a lot of trauma. Mm-hmm. Like, some people can wake up and their pillows will be hot with tears. It'll be so much sadness in what they experience within this dream. So if we rewind again to, let's say, even the origins of things, we have to realize that we're beings that we didn't use languages initially. The only purpose of a language is really to be able to say a shape. And the only use for doing that, which is called evocation, is to create something in physical realities. What we're calling physical realities. However, there is original faculty that we still have right now, which is why you dream, which was the original way that we communicated, which was through image. Right? So we would send whatever it is that we wanted to communicate to each other through imagery and through feeling and senses, not through language. And so when you can think of when language gets introduced, it's more of like the dark day of the mind. Because now a mind that used to be able to, when you close your eyes, that you could see things just as clear as you see things with them open, but you would see whatever you thought about. That faculty now being where when you close your eyes, you see mostly only darkness, and you cannot create images until you, one, give up basically consciousness of the body. That means go to sleep. And then, so basically reach a certain relaxed state to where you detach from the body, and then this olfactory, this system actually starts working automatically. But when it starts working, it is out of control. Like, because which, of course, in control would be technically a lucid dreamer, somebody who can control the dream, right? And so now that, we're, like looking at it from that level, and we're saying, okay, so can we move back into the past and remove ourselves from an action or an event And in order to kind of like, well, because the context of the story was to kind of say, well, that wasn't me, or to remove myself from the situation so that situation never occur.
Yes.
But the situation did occur. So what happens is that when we start messing around with time, which would be to rest around in our mind, like I'm going to erase that. We have to understand that what we actually do to ourselves as an organism is we go to the place that it is inside of us, and we kill it, and we seal off and cut off the area. Okay. Now, the important part of seeing it that way is that what happens if you seal off and cut off all of your senses, all like your heart, your brain, because all these different things that you don't like are lodged into these different parts of your real organism. In order for you not to feel it anymore, you have to go and actually, you have to, so you see what I'm saying? Like, this is something that's often missed. It's like, how do you stop caring? Like, when you don't care anymore, like, people don't care about the planet anymore. You know why? They're like, man, shit, I'm already dealing with it. How am I going to think about the planet? So it's technically, it's like it's a state of awareness where the being does not feel anymore. And if you look at the reality with all the cartoons or all of the TV shows, and somebody get their head blown off and something happens, and now there's a racial war, and so then it starts to just become I don't like. But if you say specifically, and this is just the awareness, because this is all one organism. If you don't like even a specific race, you start killing that race inside of you. So if a nation was the heart of the earth and you don't like that nation anymore in your mind, you kill your heart. But that goes across the board for everybody. So even if another group or nation is the brain of the organism and we don't like that being, we start killing our brain. Literally, that's how it all works. It's a feedback system that it was like so it was like when the design was created, there was never a greater design. So they just chose to continue to use the same design. This is what we're in. So that way, when we ever identify the design, we would identify everything. So it's not that, oh, there's a bunch of varieties. No, there's one design that can put forth a bunch of varieties. They say, oh, the big thing is made up of a bunch of small things. So it's a paradox. And when you start learning how to navigate it, it starts requiring you to, because like in these times, for instance, we've been discussing how, like, where you would be, because we're a magnetic vehicle.
Yes.
If you stop caring, you would kind of be on the side of your vehicle.
Okay.
Because you wouldn't basically be attracted to your vehicle. That's why when you see magnets come, they snap together, right? If you ever get out of the body, you'll find that when you get closer to your body, you snap back in. Like it's like a magnetic attraction, because the whole field is magnetic. But when you don't want to be in the experience anymore because of pain and not caring, see, this is all stuff going on behind the scenes of the real organism that we're actually in. So when you stop caring, you stop attracting to the body. And so you start being on the side of the body. And being on the side of the body actually then allows the other things that you've created, what we call the eidolons, entities, spirits, etc. The other things that you create, because your whole system is just like one big orgasmic system. How is the heart pumping? Like, have you ever sat down and listened to just somebody's heart and just for a moment be like, man, this thing be pumping for like 80, 90 years. What battery do we have go 80, 90 years pumping?
Facts. Yeah.
You see what I mean? So it's like, we're just like now at this stage where since 2023 is coming, we have to realize we're at the height now of the knowledge of men. Like now all is disclosed. So it's easy now to see the narratives, meaning the stories that have basically caught our people up into just a complete loop and even a self-destruct sequence. We have to realize that we're such powerful beings. Any story that you're hearing about life and about existence, you still have to weigh whether or not that story is even real. Because of what
how the magnitude of what we're actually in. Because the thing is that you need to go with knowledge that cannot be refuted. What we call the gems. The gems, nobody can steal them from you because they rob themselves of it. It's like the moment they steal the gem, they rob themselves of the gem. It's like the real things in life that you will have to truly, truly seek. But now notice this though, what I was reading about the type of civilization. When the civilization is very advanced, it utilizes the energy that is already being delivered to it. Like right now, we on a planet, and every day, like if you're out in the hot sun, that sun has got energy coming off of it, and a panel will take the energy and store the energy somewhere, right? But that's not all that the energies that are moving around, but that's one of them. But notice how if we got to mine every day, which is what going to work is. Because when you go to work, you got to use your mind, so you're mining. That's all the mining the gold stuff, right? Like it's like now that you're going to mine, it means that you're on a whole backwards ass technology now because you don't need to mine. Like what do we mine for? We mine for resources, and resources are energy.
Yes.
Right? But if energy is already coming, all we would need to do is just put ourselves in the position to receive. We wouldn't have to be miners. This is why magic doesn't work very well in these new systems that they've created with all these different entities and all this kind of stuff. Most of that shit don't even work. This is why most of the people that use it, they still be living at their grandma's house. You don't actually see the proof of the wisdom of the type of people that it's supposed to produce. And this is something where we would have to just look at personally as ourselves and be like, okay, check, it doesn't work. What's next? And you just got to be in your paint by yourself. It doesn't matter if everybody else agrees that it doesn't work. Like religious systems don't work. They're broken for real. They're about religion. So anytime they start talking about Jesus or any of that stuff, get away from it. It's not even something you should play with, the entities that play around with that. Right. But yet, you know, even right now, it's like they're cooking off a half-baked. I talked about it's like a half-baked Antichrist. We get like a B-rated movie Antichrist. This is how watered down the reality is. Even the prophecies are coming out like watered down, like, damn, I thought the Dajjal was going to have like one eye, and like with the other color eye, they was going to come from the east. They was going to be flowing with robes. The sky was going to get dark. You know what I mean? They had like this, and it'd be just Kanye West and Alex Jones sitting up there dooming everybody and dooming the system and dooming themselves because they bought into a narrative. And then you got to think, okay, so will those beings rapidly be making it to a type 1, type 2, type 3 civilization? Because that's when you got to look back in yourself and say, what kind of civilization is this? Like all of these beings that I got that live inside of me, how is the real communication going on between the king and his land? Right? Which is the body. And if people miss that, for instance, like the whole thing is so super connected. The ley lines that run down the earth, which are the same ley lines people go down when they die. Like, do you know when you die, you go down a highway right away? It's called, and they're straight lines. That's what they call the old straight track. And cemeteries generally are always where the big like the LAX or the ATL of where the whole transfer is about to go, because this thing is definitely not finna waste anything what we're in. People be thinking they're gonna die. So you think you could get out of it that easy? See, we created death because we were afraid of life. We needed something to kind of stop life and start life over again, because we would get headlong in the infinity crazy stuff that we needed to be like, okay, we need to stop and start again. You know, sometimes that happens in your life where you like, man, look, let me start over again in life. So that's called death, but it's not real. And what this is about now is like, so you got an ancient system, right? So now when I say type 3 civilizations, all you had to do was read in the book that I said, the Alien Wombs and Alien Parents for the Tsars, which were the Sudanese women, were
calling upon Zarin or Jinn from the stars and impregnating women with the entities, okay, which is the core of most of the magic you're looking at today. And a bad replica, by the way, because they don't know the rituals, they don't know the entities. Most of the entities are unclean. There's a whole different language to talk to these other beings. And the oracles and the czars, they were the one, the mermaids, etc., they were the ones that spoke that language. So when they cut off their mother, like what you see Orion is sitting there, you know, he's hitting his mother Taurus. When they cut off their mother, they really could not actually continue to interface with all these high levels of knowledge and wisdom, because it takes a certain level of ground and power, but it doesn't mean that you won't be able to impress everybody on a type 1 civilization or like a third world. Mm. They always talk about third world country, right? What about a third world where you come there and the cats are still fighting each other? They haven't reached singularity yet. What is singularity? It has nothing to do with some computer systems. Those are the replica byproducts, Borg. Real singularity is when the organism, which is made up of positive and negative currents, is magnetic field, which we call the torus. But in that process, this field is unified and working together, but consists of opposing poles. This is the same thing as if a male and a female are together, and then they, even though they're different, they decide to bring their two energies together to work for something that's going to benefit the two. Versus male and female could be together totally in conflict, not feeling each other, feeling the opposing forces, choose not to work together, but still be around each other, but actually be working against each other. You see, that's the easiest way to understand the field that you're talking about, because when you start thinking of positive and negative, you'll get caught up because you think negative is the bad one and positive is the good one. We went beyond that, right? Mm-hmm. But then most people never went beyond that because they're still trying to find the bad one and the good one. They still have this good category and bad category to place everything in. But the truth is, again, the reason why we have nighttime, the reason why bad things do happen to us, the reason why we have bad dreams, etc., is because we're not made up of completely good. Mm-hmm. We're not beings that are what you would call good. We're not beings that are just made up of one pole.